Okay, a lot of what we do at Rise is programming. So we're going to talk about programming strategies for peer educators. We're going to look at evidence-based programs, presentation skills. We're going to look at some rules for brainstorming, learning outcomes, program planning, program evaluation, and we'll talk about a little mock event, but we'll actually do y'all kind of already engaged in a mock event in your group interview. So that since we're not in person, we may not spend as much time on seven, and then we'll conduct a module review. Okay, so we're going to talk about evidence-based programs. For peer educators, using evidence-based approaches to create change is the best practice. So we're really going to look at what exactly makes something an evidence-based approach. These approaches are typically include the following information. They are experimental. We have a control and a study group, and we apply our quote unquote theory to one of the groups, comparing it to the control. They are evaluated by peers. Peers often use these approaches and report their findings in peer-reviewed journals. They are presented for replication. Once we have developed a peer-reviewed theory or method, we must repeat the process of application and experimentation. When a theory is tested repeatedly, it is strengthened and more valid moving forward. And then the replication efforts must produce similar results. When we repeat the steps of peer-reviewed evidence-based approaches, we hope to see similar results. When we do, these approaches are more valid moving forward. So we're going to look at the framework for evidence-based programs. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism categorizes evidence-based programs and practices into four tiers. Tier one or practices have been shown to some level of effectiveness among college students. Tier two practices have been shown to work among a general population, but haven't been tested specifically with college students. Tier three practices have a strong theoretical basis, but little to no evidence of effectiveness. And tier four practices have been tested and shown to be ineffective or even damaging. When we plan programs as peer educators, we want to make sure to work with our peers and advisors to ensure that our programs are evidence-based and likely to have a positive impact. So we're going to look at harm reduction. Many evidence-based programs incorporate harm reduction. This theory suggests it's often best to make high-risk behaviors safer by reducing the potential harm rather than demanding a person stop the behavior. We use harm reduction in almost every single thing that we do at Rise. Harm reduction is not meant to completely excuse a high-risk behavior. Instead, it provides a person with help while controlling other factors that can make it difficult to be successful in a behavior change. The aim of harm reduction is to reduce the extent to which a person is engaging in a risky behavior. Steps are put into place to help the person adopt lower risk behaviors. In this case, success is measured by how much the person lowers their health risk as opposed to quantifying successes only when abstinence is achieved. The approach can be controversial at times, particularly when health topics being addressed is attached to a moral issue such as sexual activity or drug use. So we're going to look at the types of peer educator programming. We've got some passive and then we've got some active programming. When we discuss what types of programs peer educators can plan, we really need to look at the two different types. Again, the first is active programming. This type of program involves some sort of interaction between a peer educator and another student. It can be an extended interaction, like a presentation or coaching session, or a brief interaction, like a tabling event or a quick conversation at a social event. Passive program, on the other hand, involves no person-to-person interaction. Flyers, social media campaigns, or other visuals that we do are common examples of passive programming. And at Rise, we definitely have both passive and active. We should also note that programs can be a mixture of passive and active and exist somewhere between the two, as we see on the spectrum. We're going to be focusing on active programming in this module, but remember, passive programming is also very important. We're going to look at the four cornerstones of a presentation. As we mentioned, presentations are a common form of active programming, and you'll be asked to do presentations at your time at Rise. The four cornerstones of successful presentations are the four that you see on this screen. So we need to talk about knowing yourself. What is your style? Are you someone that likes to incorporate humor into a presentation? In addition, do you have any remarkable skills such as utilizing technology or incorporating music into presentations? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Are you still working on your public speaking skills? Another piece is knowing your material. Remember, practice makes perfect. Do you sound confident and competent in the material that you present? Do you incorporate statistics and research into your presentation to make yourself sound more credible? Know your audience. Why is the audience there? Are they being forced to be there? Maybe for student conduct, or maybe FSL, fraternity and sorority life, is trying to make sure that we hit a specific requirement. What is the age of the audience? Are you speaking to students, to faculty, and staff? Are you speaking to freshmen? Are you speaking to seniors? What knowledge are they bringing to the table? And then know your purpose. Why are you there? Are you trying to meet a goal or an outcome? How will you know if you're successful? So at Rise, we have our presentations already done. They incorporate these things, but really more so looking at the know yourself and know your audience is going to be, well, obviously know your material, but we give you a lot of training on that. But knowing yourself and knowing your audience is a piece that you're going to be able to do. There's different parts of the presentation, three specifically. Successful presentations typically have these three parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. At the beginning of the presentation, we want to create space. We must consider the type of space we want to create for our interaction. We want to make a safe climate. You'll never be able to create a 100% safe environment for every participant at every time at every presentation, but you can try to ensure that you have created a safer climate. We always, in our presentations, establish ground rules. Ideally, your participants should be a part of establishing these ground rules, maybe making it interactive for them, asking them, are there any other ground rules that y'all want to set? Establishing these rules at the beginning of the presentation definitely helps set the tone at the presentation. We also may want to have warm-ups or icebreakers. These activities help people mentally prepare to participate. You could simply have the audience members introduce themselves or conduct an energizer activity that involves physical movement. You can tell during a lot of the slides here, there was an activity, kind of helps break it up. Again, I know we're virtual, so it's a little different, but the icebreakers help break up all the information. The delivery is the middle of a presentation, and this includes delivering your content and facilitating conversation. So we want to look at providing variety. A presentation can be exceptionally boring if you lecture at your audience. Provide a variety of activities and events to break up the monotony of the event. You could give individuals opportunities to work with those next to them, provide role plays or skits, or incorporate videos. These steps will allow the audience to fully engage with the material. We want to balance and pace, appropriately balance and pace the presentation. Pay attention to the audience clues to show if they're engaged. If you get the sense that the audience is no longer paying attention or engaged, consider taking a break or have them complete an activity. This can allow you to fully interact your audience in a productive manner. And then being flexible. Sometimes a presentation or training won't go as planned. Maybe you need to review concepts that you thought your audience was already really familiar with. Maybe you need to spend some more time on a topic because your audience is asking for it. That's okay. Be flexible and willing to change if needed. You'll probably notice that in this training, we've had to go back and forth on some slides and really dive into some specific topics, and that's okay. At the conclusion of the presentation, consider the following things. Thank your audience. You should always thank them, regardless if they were voluntary or involuntary. Consider having some RISE materials to hand out to them so that way they can contact us in the future. We're looking at ways to amp up evaluating our presentation, so we're working on that throughout this summer. But an evaluation gives tips on how we can improve. And then be open for questions. A good rule is always be the last person to leave a presentation. A person in the room may want to ask questions, but they may be afraid of asking in front of other people. Stay around until the end to allow the individual to ask the questions. Make sure the information available for the individuals who want more information on your presentation topic. Sometimes we present to classes and the instructor may want to lecture after we present, so you may not be able to be the last person in the room, and that's okay. I want you to kind of think to yourself, what is the most successful program you've ever attended on campus? What factors made the program so successful? And you can pause and either write this down or think of these things in your head. So let's keep those factors in mind that you thought about for a bit as we start to think about creating our own program. The first step that we want to do to create a program is to figure out what we want to do. This group process is a method for engaging and brainstorming as a group. So you'll do this within your little committees. The structured process is designed to encourage participation from everyone. The group process is especially effective when you want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable participating. When some or all of the group members are new to the team, or when the issue being discussed is controversial or involves conflict, the brainstorming piece really helps everybody feel comfortable. A nominal group process involves three steps: individual brainstorm, group brainstorming, and culmination. So, really looking at the rules of nominal group process part one, this is the individual brainstorm stage. Most important, you should be very clear about what problem you're trying to address and what kinds of ideas individuals should think of. Each team member should work by him or herself to create a list of questions or ideas. There are no wrong answers in this stage. The goal is to achieve quantity over quality. So just in your head right now, we're just going to practice the first stage of nominal group processing. So we want you to think of a list of topics or issues that you could address throughout a program. You can use your own prompt, or here's some ideas that we can give to you. Maybe looking at issues faced by first-year college students, maybe high-risk behaviors, maybe barriers to student success in college, maybe problems faced by students at Texas Tech University, maybe risky drinking behaviors. So looking at those different types and brainstorming a program that you could create. So the rules of nominal group process part two, after everyone has compiled an individual list, we want to bring the entire group together and share ideas with one another. Again, y'all are going to be split up into sexual health and healthy relationships, mental well-being, and alcohol and other drugs. So you'll be able to work with other peer educators in your areas on this as we go through the semester. Each team member should share one idea, one by one, until all the ideas have been shared. Just like in the previous stage, there's no right or wrong answers. It can be tempting to jump ahead to decide which suggestions are best, but we really want to suspend all judgment in this stage and hear what everyone had to say about their idea. So the rules of nominal group processing part three. After all ideas have been shared with the group, we can start to evaluate responses. We should eliminate repeated suggestions and group similar suggestions together. So if we have a lot of the same thing, we can kind of put them all together, even if they're maybe a little different. We can also eliminate suggestions that we agree would not lead to an effective solution. Once we have narrowed down the list, we can discuss which of the remaining responses work best. So now that we've come up with a basic idea or topic for the program, we want to think about our goals. What do we want this program to accomplish? Is there a need we are trying to meet? Thinking about these goals as we communicate our program, thinking about these goals will help us as we communicate our program's educational value. Assessment can help us figure out where to focus our programming efforts, as it can help identify our campus and community needs. Learning outcomes are an easy way to establish our program's goals. They're a great tool. A good learning outcome describes the measurable skills or knowledge a student will be able to demonstrate after participating in the program or even the presentation. We want to think not only what our purpose is, but also how we will know whether our purpose has been achieved. Here's some information on writing SMART learning outcomes. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. This is an easy way to remember how to craft strong learning outcomes. A lot of you may be familiar with SMART goals. The learning outcome should focus on one specific skill or piece of knowledge. It should be easily measurable. It should be feasible for a student to achieve. It should also be relevant to the program or the thing that we are doing or discussing. And then finally, the outcome should be time bound. This means you need to be able to establish when you expect the outcome to be achieved. So this is looking at learning how to write learning outcomes. So here's a helpful formula for writing a learning outcome. First, state your program. Then use a phrase. Students will be able to, shorten here, it's that acronym, students will be able to. After that, think of a descriptive and measurable verb to use. Finally, establish what the student will know, what skill they will possess, or what change in their attitude will occur. These are a lot of action verbs for learning outcomes. Remember to think about which verbs will best fit with your program. Keep in mind that your outcomes should be SMART. And you can take time, you can pause this slide, take a picture of it. This is really good for looking at learning outcomes. We're going to look at an event planning worksheet. We have brainstormed ideas for a program topic. That's what you did when we paused earlier. Now we'll talk about the specifics of how to create and implement a program. As you can see in your workbook, the program planning process includes several important areas. So we look at budget. How much will this event cost? What costs will be associated with the event? Is it advantageous to overestimate costs rather than underestimate to ensure that we have enough money to fund the event? Costs can include supplies, space, rentals, food, advertising, and so forth. We don't do fundraising to pay for our event, so we're going to skip over that. Location, where are we holding the event? If we're planning an outdoor event, we should maybe have a backup plan due to the weather. We get a lot of strong winds in Lubbock and snow, so inclement weather can occur at any time. We're looking at timing. Establish a complete time frame of your event. Look at both time before and after the event for setup and cleanup. Consider that some individuals may stay longer at your event if it's particularly engaging. If we look at food, are we going to provide food? We should be mindful of dietary restrictions and allergies. Are the following options available? Vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free. If you're asking for an RSVP to your event, consider asking for dietary restrictions in advance. When we look at presentation or entertainment, what will the presentation be? Are we going to need technology? If so, what does it cost? Do we have appropriate accessory equipment, adapters for computers? Will we be able to amplify sound? Texas Tech doesn't allow us to play music throughout the day while classes are going on, so we won't be able to do that. If we're having any other forms of entertainment, is there a contracting process to bring in the outside individual? Marketing. This is the most overlooked part of program planning is marketing. Luckily for us, we have a marketing team that works really well with all the events. But how will we market our programs? But all of our marketing does this, but you can also help them and give them ideas for marketing. And then evaluation. How will you determine if your event is successful? An online survey is one method. However, response rates for these types of surveys can typically be low. We can consider giving surveys to students at the event, collecting data from social media. Maybe we can offer other creative ways to evaluate our programs. We're going to talk a little bit more about evaluating our programs. It's important because it lets us know whether our goals and learning outcomes were achieved. But it will also help us improve our event if we decide to hold it again in the future. If we're using a survey, consider when and how we are going to administer it. It's best to administer as soon as possible after the event is over so that everything is still fresh in the attendees' minds. We also might want to administer a long-term follow-up survey to determine whether participants even retain the information. We want to derive at least some questions directly from our learning outcomes. Evaluating an event can also give us an idea of who attended the program and why, which can help us reach a broader and more diverse audience with our future programs. Finally, we want to ask both qualitative and quantitative questions. There's a difference in qualitative and quantitative, so we're going to talk a little bit about the two. Quantitative questions deal with data that can be represented numerically. These include yes or no questions, as well as questions that ask participants to rate something on a numerical scale. So on a scale from 1 to 5, how much information did you retain? And the scale would have certain metrics on there. Quantitative questions are easy to administer and the responses are easy to compile and analyze, but they tend to be fairly simplistic and they don't give a lot of in-depth information, and that's for quantitative. Qualitative questions, on the other hand, are open-ended and require participants to come up with their own answers. These questions give us much more in-depth data, but these are harder to administer and analyze. So when we think about this, the last little piece of discussion is I want y'all to think about what type of question was easier to come up with. If you look at, I'm actually going to skip over this part because y'all are going to do this in your group interviews that y'all have already completed. So when we look at what are some, we're done now with the module. We're going to look at a review. What are some good verbs to use when writing learning outcomes? Remember, there's a whole sheet on this in this presentation. Y'all can screenshot that and keep it for whenever you may need. When we look at having a successful presentation, there are 3 parts to it. We want to create space, have a good delivery, and have a good conclusion. The 4 cornerstones to a good presentation is knowing yourself, knowing your material, knowing your audience, and knowing your purpose. And the ways that we can evaluate a program or a presentation, we can do it through quantitative methods, those numbers, those data, or we can do it qualitatively. We can look at asking open-ended questions and getting a more in-depth analysis. And that concludes Module 7.